Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking an absolute masterclass in strategy, survival, and sheer conviction. We are going to look at the Battle of Badr, a really pivotal moment where an incredibly outmatched, under-equipped force somehow managed to change the course of history forever.
Okay, let's dive right into this because we are immediately faced with the ultimate historical knowledge gap. How exactly did just 313 individuals not only survive, but decisively defeat an organized military force that was more than 3 times their size?
To figure that out, we've got a clear roadmap for today. We'll be looking at 1. The road to Badr, 2. The intelligence war, 3. The armies converge, 4. Combat and miracles, and finally, 5. The legacy of Badr.
Let's start right in with Section 1, the road to Badr. Because to truly understand this event, we first have to look at the incredibly precarious situation these early Muslims were facing.
To grasp the stakes here, you really have to understand the context of the early Muslims who had just recently migrated to Medina. These were people who had left absolutely everything behind: their wealth, their properties, their homes. They were severely impoverished. Some literally lived in the Prophet's mosque because they had nothing. And added to this extreme poverty, they were facing continuous, looming hostility and the very real threat of total eradication from the Quraysh leadership back in Mecca. Basically, they were pushed to the absolute edge.
Which brings us to Section 2, the intelligence war. Because long before a single sword was drawn, a highly sophisticated war of minds was already taking place. Prophet Muhammad utilized an unprecedented intelligence network to try and level the playing field. He dispatched small reconnaissance teams of about 8 to 10 men just to scout the routes. When the army finally moved, he ordered the removal of bells from all the camels' necks. We're talking complete operational silence. They also relied on capturing and interrogating local water carriers to gather real-time data. In a situation like this, preparation was absolutely everything.
And the intensity of this espionage, it was just incredible. The leader of the opposing Meccan trade caravan, Abu Sufyan, was actually running his own brilliant counterintelligence. Suspecting he was being tracked, he literally broke open camel dung near a water well and found something shocking: date seeds. But specifically, seeds that were completely unique to Medina fodder. From that one tiny detail, he instantly knew enemy scouts were in the area.
Let's move to Section 3, the armies converge. Because what started as a simple attempt to intercept a caravan is about to escalate dramatically. It is amazing how rapidly this timeline escalates. On day 1, the Muslims leave Medina to intercept the trade caravan. But by day 3, Abu Sufyan, thanks to that sharp counterintelligence we just talked about, reroutes his caravan to the safety of the coast and sends an emergency SOS to Mecca. In response, on day 6, a massive, fully equipped Quraysh army marches out to completely crush the Muslims. And by the 10th day, these two drastically different forces converge at the Valley of Badr.
Still unsure of the enemy's exact size, the Prophet interrogated 2 captured Meccan water carriers. When they couldn't give him a precise head count, he asked a genuinely brilliant deductive question: how many camels do they slaughter every day? The carriers answered 9 or 10. From that basic food consumption metric alone, the Prophet instantly calculated that the Quraysh force was between 900 and 1,000 soldiers.
Now, what's really interesting when we look at the numbers is the sheer mathematical reality of what they were facing. It's staggering. The Muslims had 313 men, only 3 horses, and 70 camels. Meanwhile, the Quraysh had roughly 1,000 well-armed men, 100 horses, and over 100 camels. This was fundamentally a David versus Goliath conflict. The Muslims were totally, hopelessly outgunned.
But the outmatched army was incredibly smart. They used environmental tactics to totally strip the Quraysh of their advantages. They got there first and secured the primary water wells. Then, when a heavy rain fell, they used the geography to force the heavy Meccan cavalry into the soft, muddy terrain, severely slowing them down. Finally, they strategically deployed archers on the flanks to completely neutralize any charging horsemen.
Moving into Section 4, Combat and Miracles. Here, we're going to impartially look at both the concrete military actions and the religious accounts exactly as they're recorded in the sources. So the physical clash kicks off with traditional Arab duels, which was a customary practice that really set the psychological tone for the entire battle. 3 Muslim warriors, Ali ibn Abi Talib, Hamza, and Ubaidah, stepped forward to face 3 renowned champions of the Quraysh. The Muslims decisively won these initial one-on-one engagements, and that sent a massive shockwave straight through the Meccan lines. Once the general fighting broke out, the individual heroism was just staggering. According to the historical texts, of the 70 polytheists who fell that day, Ali was credited with defeating exactly 35 of them single-handedly. Just think about that. That is literally half of the enemy's total casualties attributed to the sword of just one man.
But alongside those gritty military tactics, the religious texts are very clear about there being unseen support. The sources actually cite that thousands of angels descended in battle array to reinforce those 313 men. For the believers, the ultimate credit for the triumph belonged to God, as stated directly in the text, and God has given you victory. We impartially see numerous miraculous interventions recorded in these texts, and they range from the miraculous healing of severed limbs right there in the middle of combat, to angelic forces striking down the enemy, to a pivotal moment where the prophet threw a handful of sand toward the opposing force, which miraculously swept across the entire battlefield, blinding and disorienting the Meccan lines.
So, the crucial point is, what was the final outcome? And how did this single day echo through time? Let's wrap things up with Section 5, the legacy of Badr. When the dust finally settled, the results were incredibly stark. The Muslims suffered 14 casualties, who were honored as martyrs. On the flip side, that massive Quraysh army suffered a devastating, humiliating defeat. 70 of their most elite men were killed, and another 70 were taken as prisoners. Against all odds, the underdogs had achieved the impossible.
And because of this, Badr holds a monumental place in Islamic history. As detailed in the Battle of Badr poem from our sources, the day is conceptually defined as Furqan, or the criterion. It's remembered as the definitive, dividing moment that separated truth from falsehood, marking the indisputable triumph and the survival of the early Islamic faith.
Which leaves us with this final, genuinely fascinating question to ponder. If the strategic brilliance, the intense intelligence gathering, and the unwavering conviction of just 313 men at Badr secured the survival of Islam in its absolute most vulnerable hour, how did the legacy of this single, extraordinary day shape the centuries of global history that followed? Think on that.